First, I want to recognize, first of all, thank you all so much for being here. And thank you for my team to helping put this together. This was incredibly important, especially in Michigan, where we see ICE expansion happening from ICE warehouse proposed in Romulus, Michigan, near our Detroit Metro Airport, as well as in Southfield, which is a community right outside of Detroit. They're expanding offices and presence there. So the ICE expansion has reached the state of Michigan, and I know other communities are responding the way we are, which is of concern, and the fear in our communities is rising, so we must do something about it. So I want to recognize the brave immigrants, the incredible immigrant neighbors that are right now at the largest Midwest for-profit ICE warehouse, and that's ICE's North Lake facility in Baldwin, Michigan. They have launched a hunger strike to protest the inhumane conditions and policies that strip them of their dignity and their rights. And I want them to know, I am urging my colleagues in the Michigan delegation to please visit the Baldwin facility, North Lake right now. The detainees, our immigrant neighbors that are in there, are holding, again, a hunger strike. That's how bad the facility is. After hearing from one of our attorneys from our community in Michigan of a young teen, 19-year-old, who used the glass from his cell phone to slice his arms, trying to kill himself because he just didn't want to be there. He didn't belong there. And shame on our country for continuing to take so many of our immigrant neighbors and treating them like animals and putting them in these cages. They shouldn't have to risk their lives to demand that they are treated like human beings. And I want you all to know we all here stand with them. I'm proud also to be here today with Detention Watch Network and all the incredible organizers and activists who helped us craft, who helped us listen to those that, again, are directly impacted, to introduce the Ban Warehouse Detention Act. ICE and CPB are terrorizing our neighborhoods, as you all know. They're murdering people right in the streets in broad daylight. They're tear gassing 6-month-old babies, tearing our families apart, abducting our neighbors and locking them in cages. People are dying from medical neglect, and the violent abuse in these facilities are just growing and getting worse because there's not less people there. It's growing to be thousands and thousands of people. In 2025 was ICE's deadliest year in 2 decades, and at least 32 people died in their custody during that time that we know of. In a few months, only in 2026, at least 17 people have already died in the federal government's ICE custody since this year started. My neighbors in Southwest Detroit, many people know I was born and raised in the most beautiful, blackest city in the country, but Southwest Detroit was a hub of 20 different ethnicities, an immigrant community. And they have been warning us for years to stop funding ICE. They are too militarized, they would tell us. That they're racially profiling, that they would tell us. They were conducting operations in front of daycares and schools and health clinics, and even a couple times in front of churches. So for many of us that are experiencing, including myself, living in a border community in the northern border, we know and we have felt over and over again since its inception that this is an agency that cannot be reformed. Meanwhile, our Republican colleagues in this Trump administration continue to give them billions of dollars more for their detention, for-profit detention and deportation machine. And the agency even brags about it, y'all. ICE director at the time, Todd Lyons, said that we need to make ICE, quote, like Amazon Prime, but with human beings. Think about that. It's disgusting. ICE is now attempting to expand its unwanted presence in our community, as I talked about, in Romulus and Southfield. They're taking over this warehouse in Romulus that was supposed to create auto jobs. Auto jobs were supposed to be created in this warehouse. Instead, they're slated to put hundreds of bodies in that facility, turning it into caging hundreds of our immigrant neighbors. Local residents, alongside no detention centers in Michigan, have vocally opposed the opening of the site. They're there weekly, protesting and demanding to end the funding. The state of Michigan and the city of Romulus have already filed a lawsuit to block the facility's opening. They are actively, right now we know that ICE is actively scouting, purchasing, and planning to convert approximately 23 warehouses across our nation into these cages. They will only increase the serious human rights abuses and trauma on immigrant families, including medical neglect, inhumane conditions, and rising deaths. Warehouses like this are built for storing products, not people. But they do not view us as human beings, people of color, and most of them are black and brown bodies. They view us as potential profit and a shareholder value. I know what happens inside these detention centers because I've seen it myself. Medical neglect, overcrowding, people literally cut off from their families and legal support. They even deny lawyers. They can say it up and down that they don't, but they deny lawyers access to their clients for hours. The Ban Warehouse Detention Act would prohibit the Department of Homeland Security, including ICE, from establishing, operating, expanding, converting, and renovating any warehouse or similar building or structure for the purposes of caging people. The bill would also prevent the administration from establishing any new immigrant detention models. So I want to tell you all, the for-profit scheme within our detention system that they have right now, GEO Group, which owns the Baldwin facility, they made over $250 billion last year. They are still complaining that wasn't enough money. And these are folks that donate to many of my colleagues that remain silent in this house right here behind me. And there are many of them, actually, GEO Group and Civic Group, Core, have donated to the Trump campaigns. So make sure we also cite that, because I think it's important to understand that there is a for-profit scheme. They're literally profiting off of the inhumane conditions of holding our immigrant neighbors in these cages. So let's pass the Warehouse Detention Act. Let's defeat this budget reconciliation bill. I say hell no to funding this cruelty. No more, not one more cent for these violent agencies. Let's abolish detention. Let's abolish ICE. With that, I ask for my friend from where we are, Senior Advisor Manager at Detention Watch. Thank you so much for your incredible work. Marisol Hernandez is going to be up next.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman, and good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for being here. My name is Marisol Hernandez, and I'm the Senior Advocacy Manager at Detention Watch Network. For nearly 30 years, we have been dedicated to exposing the depravity of immigration detention system in the United States, a system that is fundamentally inhumane, unnecessary, and deadly. In immigration detention, people are deprived of freedom, caged in isolation, and made to suffer abysmal conditions, including medical neglect, physical and verbal abuse, overcrowding, insufficient access to food and water, and rampant transfers that cut people off from their loved ones and support networks. People in immigration detention have described it as hell on earth, because it is. As mentioned, 2025 was the deadliest year on record for ICE deaths, and in the first 4 years of 2026, we have already reached a staggering 17 deaths in ICE custody. The Trump administration is carrying out a multi-layered detention expansion plan at a previously unimaginable rate and scope and scale, including ICE scouting, purchasing, and retrofitting industrial warehouses with the price tag of over $40 billion. All immigration detention is inherently inhumane and rife with abuse, and yet this model is particularly horrifying. Jailing people in large-scale makeshift detention warehouses will exponentially increase the likelihood of abuse and death. Detention warehouses will also divert resources such as water and electricity from local communities, cut off tax revenues, and foreclose economic opportunities. People are not commodities to be shipped, discarded, or profited off of in detention warehouses or in any detention facility. The threat of detention warehouses harkens back to one of our most shameful periods of a nation, when warehouses were used for the incarceration of Japanese Americans in the 1940s. It was wrong then, and it's wrong now. Now more than ever, we need real leaders to act courageously for the rights and the dignity of all communities and all people. We welcome Congresswoman Tlaib's leadership in introducing the Ban Warehouse Detention Act to say no more immigration detention expansion. The American people deserve investments like healthcare, housing, education, and programs that will support everyone, not abusive and deadly detention systems. Communities from coast to coast are already fighting back and winning, successfully stopping ICE warehouses' plans through organizing and public pressure. On Saturday, communities will continue this pressure across the country and will mobilize against Trump administration's reckless expansion of ICE warehouses in across 180 events nationwide. So we demand an end to Trump's cruel mass detention expansion, and we demand that immigration detention facilities are shut down for good. And now it is my honor to pass on the mic to a leader in Washington County Indivisible, Laura. Good morning. I'm here on behalf of Washington County Indivisible and our partner organizations of Hagerstown Rapid Response, Maryland Coalition to Stop the Camps, and more, who oppose a planned ICE detention warehouse in Williamsport, Maryland. Since finding out about DHS's plans to convert an empty warehouse in a quiet pocket of our home into an ICE camp, people from all areas, backgrounds, ages, and beliefs have pulled together in record time to protect our immigrant neighbors and our community from the overreach and lawlessness that ICE brings with it everywhere it goes, and from keeping our county by being steamrolled by the federal government into letting it become an international backdrop for human rights atrocities. We've protested, we've written and called, we've fought legal battles, and much more. With little more than our convictions, our courage, and our community coming together to pool its collective talents and resources, we've built a scrappy, effective movement that has defied all odds and achieved much more than anyone thought possible to delay and hopefully ultimately shut down this warehouse. But not only have we been up against the feds, we've been pushing back against our county commissioners as well. Their lack of transparency and direct involvement with DHS's warehouse plan is concerning and makes bills like the Ban Warehouse Detention Act all the more important because it prevents local politicians from colluding with DHS to convert warehouses into detention camps, taking the decision out of their hands, and prevents them from shutting out the voices of residents like us in Washington County. The people of Williamsport in Maryland, where this warehouse is planned, have shared with me a list of things they believe county funds would be better spent on than a concentration camp. These include relocating the local library, preservation of historical sites and waterways, improvements to school buildings, and bringing more tourism to the historic downtown area. A prison camp will not help Williamsport develop economically. It will drive down property values and bring shame to a town that deserves a helping hand, not a federal slap in the face. Please support our National Day of Action to stop ICE warehouses this Saturday, April 25th, by attending a local event near you. We will be holding a candlelight vigil in Hagerstown, Maryland for those who have died in ICE detention at 7 p.m. in the public square. We would love to see you there. And now I'd like to introduce Eduardo Zelaya, Director of Organizing at CASA in Action. Oh, I stole this.
Buenos días. Good morning. Good morning. My name is Eduardo Zelaya, and I serve as the Director of Organizing in Virginia at We Are CASA. We are a national organization with over 200,000 members across 46 states, including Puerto Rico, and we are here today to make something clear. I was born and raised in El Salvador. I immigrated to the United States in 2010, and I'm proud to call this country my home, the place where I came to pursue the American dream. But for many of us, many of our communities, that dream has been challenged. Over the past two Trump administration, we have seen a strange behavior that to the point where evidence are showing us that history is repeating, but now in our soil. Before that behavior is one that has created fear and uncertainty in our communities. A shift where policies are being used to criminalize people who are simply trying to live, work, provide for their families. And let's be clear about who we are. We are a community that contributes to this country every single day. Over 32 million immigrants workers power the U.S. economy. That's nearly 19% of the entire workforce. We contribute over $382 billion in federal taxes and over $196 billion in state and local taxes. We are not burdened. We are a backbone of this country. And yet, despite these contributions, our community are being targeted by policies that undermine our dignity and our rights. Today, we are seeing that impact clearly. Immigration detention has increased by more than 75% in just 1 year after Trump took office, reaching tens of thousands of people detained daily. And now we are facing something even more alarming. Plans to convert over 20 warehouses into detention centers, facilities that could hold up to 7,000 to 10,000 people each, proposals that could detain up to 80,000 people in warehouse-style facilities nationwide. Let's be clear about what that means. These are not facilities designed for people. These are systems designed for scale. And when you combine that with a system where majority of those detained have no criminal record, we have asked ourselves, what are we really building? Who are we really building this for? Because this is not about public safety. This is about a model that is expanding for profit at the expense of our communities. And from what we see on the ground, the consequences are real. Families stop seeking care. Since January of this year, approximately 14% of all immigrant adults in the United States reports avoiding medical care due to fears of immigration enforcement. Workers stay home. Across the United States, approximately 1.2 million immigrants disappear from the labor force. Communities lost trust in institutions. Our kids are afraid to show up in the classrooms. Research and school reports indicate that roughly 10 to 22% of students in affected districts have skipped school or withdrawn due to fears related to ICE showing up in our schools and campuses. Let's be clear, these are facts, and I see that in my campus in Virginia. This is not safety. This is not instability. That is instability. But despite this divisive and harmful environment, there is something we never stop doing, and that is hope. Hope that we will overcome this. Hope that our communities will continue to rise. Hope that we will build something better together. Because even in these moments like this, we continue to train our communities on know your rights. We continue to conduct wellness checks in our neighborhoods. We continue to organize to ensure that this does not happen again. That is the work. That is the commitment. We proved it last November. That is hope, and we cannot do this alone. And this is why I recognize and thank Congresswomen Tlaib, Rashida, and for the leadership and our partners at the Detention Watch Network. Because real changes takes all of us, and that is exactly what hope looks like. Collective action, collective leadership, and collective courage. And this is why we are proud to support this legislation, because it draws a line, because it says enough is enough, and because it protects the future of our communities, because it helps expose that this broader crisis is not about our legal status anymore. It goes beyond that. Therefore, I'm honored standing alongside representatives and their leadership to affirm that our community members and leadership from across 46 states, including Maryland, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and the Commonwealth of Virginia, stand in strong support of this bill. Let's ban injustices. Thank you. I'm pleased to introduce the next speaker, Jesse, Associate Director of Policy at the National Immigrant Justice Center.
Yes.
Thanks so much, Eduardo. Thanks so much, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, for leading this incredibly important initiative. I grew up in Michigan, and it's really an honor to have leaders like you in this fighting back against this mass detention expansion system. I'm Jesse Franzbaugh, Associate Director of the National Immigrant Justice Center. For over 4 decades, NIJC has dedicated itself to ensuring human rights protections and access to justice for immigrants, refugees, and asylum seekers. Headquartered in Chicago, Illinois, NIJC provides direct legal services to around 10,000 low-income individuals a year and advocates on behalf of our immigrant communities through policy advocacy, impact litigation, and public education. NIJC serves people throughout the country with a focus on the Midwest region, people facing rampant rights violations by federal immigration enforcement agents and inhumane conditions in immigration detention. The legislation to stop ICE detention from expanding to warehouses is absolutely imperative to prevent more taxpayer dollars from going towards a modern-day immigration internment camp system in the form of industrial warehouses. For too long, private prison CEOs have lobbied to drive up the detention system for profit at the expense of community needs. We thank our elected leaders for carrying out visits to detention facilities, like the one in North Lake, Baldwin, that the Congresswoman spoke about, demanding people's release from these prisons and working to stop any more funds for ICE and Border Patrol. We're incredibly grateful for members of Congress out here today and for those who co-sponsored this bill and who are fighting back against the billions in funds going towards private contractors that are making a killing off of immigrant imprisonment. We say not another dollar for the violent enforcement operations that are ravaging our communities, and not another dollar for immigration detention and expansion. We say yes to funding for health, education, and child needs. We encourage folks to show up this Saturday on the 25th for the Day of Action. The Detention Watch Network and other groups are organizing, and we thank you all for keeping up the fight. And now I'll pass it back to the Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib.
It's on your guys' website to find out a local protest.
Oh yeah, they have the map.
Okay. There's so for folks that are not from DMV area, there is a map of some sort on what on Mobilize. Well, I think it's is it going into the website? Okay, we'll probably be able to put detentionwatchnetwork.org. That's what I was looking for, and get the information there. I know there's a weekly one in Romulus regarding that one in particular. I'm going to ask Melissa if you have any. I'm going to open up for questions and see if Melissa, you can start with her.
Hi,
Yeah.
thanks for doing this. Yeah, I wondered if you could talk a little bit about the bill and how it, whether it would be retroactive, I guess, because I understand some of these facilities have already been purchased and maybe,
Yeah.
There's renovations underway.
I mean, if it basically abolishes it, it prevents it and makes it impossible to exist under current law if it got passed tomorrow. So it basically says you can't do it. Yeah.
The intention is that wherever they are in the
So
process of
yeah,
converting or
and it's really important to know. In the first Trump administration, there was a ton popped up. As soon as the Biden administration came in and obviously saw because you should all know, and it should be researched, the grievances that have been filed at every single facility. These grievances, I wish, again, people would file FOIAs and get this information. I will help. But many of us help our immigrant neighbors that are in there, including attorneys, to file grievances. In some facilities, we're talking about in the hundreds of grievances around food, medical neglect, conditions, even sexual abuse. And so we need to make sure that this is transparent. But because of that, I know for a fact GEO Group had a facility in Baldwin, not the particular one they're at now, that got closed down because of that abuse under the previous administration. So absolutely, we are trying to prevent and stop cruelty, and that means all forms of warehouse forms of detention or cages. Huffington Post?
Yeah, kind of a two-parter. The DOJ lawyers said in court that building out the detention network could actually help lead to better conditions for detainees. I was wondering if you think there's any chance of that. Mm-hmm. And secondly, Secretary Mullen has said he wants to review the whole warehouse project. Mm-hmm. Do you think they might back off?
We need to save lives right now, and I'm not going to wait for a task force and the year later more people died, more people were abused, more people are more sicker. I mean, we have a young lady that was in the facility for over a year at 33 years old, never had a seizure before, has a seizure because of malnutrition and sleep deprivation. I mean, this is a form of torture. But I think it's really important to know this. Many people that I've talked to, and I have 3 specifically at the for-profit facility in Baldwin, Michigan, they signed as soon as they got there. Remember at the beginning they were encouraging people, hey, if you want to leave, go ahead, don't fight us, we'll let you go. Many of us know specific immigrant neighbors that have signed off and said, please go ahead and send us back to our native country, we're ready to leave. And they still keep them there. Why? Because they're making money off of keeping them there. I know for a fact one signed one in July of last year, and they still have not allowed him to go back home. And so I think it's really important to understand that, and understand that they're not trying to reduce and they're not trying to make it better. They're trying to make more money off of it because, again, it's not just GEO Group. The for-profit industry is complaining that it's not revved up fast enough and they're not making enough money. And I feel like that's going to taint whatever process DOJ thinks they're about to do. You got to take the for-profit scheme out of it because that seems to be the driving force, not whether or not they're allowing people to be killed in these facilities and whether or not it is inhumane and against various international human rights laws that we all signed on to as a country. But with that, I'm going to end. We have votes, but individuals are here if you all want to ask them questions, and we'll also be able to connect folks. If you have a state that you're interested in and want to cover, we can connect them to advocates on the ground in those communities as well. Thank you all so much for being here. Can I get a picture? Yes. Yeah. Actually, if you want, you can get in it, and then they can. Yeah. We'll get the Capitol in the background too. Yeah. All right, you ready, guys? Who's taking the picture?
All of them.
Oh, she's right there. She's right there. Okay. I think you can go in front of the camera.